Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. This is a quick update on my coal facility, both the loading part and the unloading part, and other little things that I've been working on. So I just finished loading the coal train that you see here, the unit train, very long one. I would say it's about 40 cars or so, 40, maybe a little under. And I loaded it successfully and unloaded it semi-successfully. I'm still working on a little bug here and there, but for the most part it's functioning. And so as this train makes its way around, I'm just going to tell you what's been going on here with the coal facility and the unloading facility. So we're in, I guess, almost mid-November, and I've been working very hard on this little project here. That was not supposed to be this involved. It was just supposed to be a basic branch that you would back up a few cars into, this very traditional, very common coal facility that everybody gets from Walters. But then I started to kind of, get excited by flood loaders and continuous running of the train while loading the train, and I decided to add a more modern flood loader that's connected to the original facility, so that it would only just be one line rather than a bunch of lines going in. So now I'm going to make this for trucks to load up some coal there, and this will just be a single track that goes through for the coal train. Just stop the train so I don't run it into the wall at this point. I'm just going to turn off the sound. So here are a few things that have been going on with this project. The first thing is that when I started to build a flood loader, I said, all right, cool. So I'm just going to, make that building, connect the original Walters coal plant, and then just leave this flat and just put a few coal piles here and there just to make it look like something. Then I decided to cut this out because I noticed that through doing some research that a lot of these coal facilities are near a river or near some kind of water, so that barges can come in and either load or unload. And a lot of times it's a much bigger project than what I'm trying to replicate here. So the way I see it is this is supposed to be just kind of like a transfer facility more than like a power facility or anything like that. So what I imagine is that these barges come in from some other location. They get pushed in by the tugboats. Once they're here, this crane, well, not this one, I ordered a much nicer looking one, would scoop up the coal and then dump it into this hopper, which is going to look a lot better than that thing that I have there. And from there, would go underground up into this tower, which would then get elevated, and then it would go either for the trucks through here, or it would get dumped out. There's going to be another conveyor belt that comes out of here into these piles for later use, which then get pushed into this shed with a bulldozer or a front loader, as I've seen on videos and things on YouTube. And then it would push the coal in there, which would then go kind of underground and then up into this conveyor belt, which would then take it up to the flood loader and then obviously onto the train cars. So that's the operation, so to speak, that you would not see. The only part of it you would see is obviously the train coming through and getting loaded. And if you want to see how I did that, all the mechanics and how I use the servo to open and close the gate for the flood loader, I have another video that's on this same playlist if you want to check that out. All right, so that's the general idea. This crane is going to be not on tracks, but it's going to be one of those like almost like a tank, with tread, and it's going to move this way so it can have access to the full barge. I was thinking of motorizing it somehow and making it move, but end scale is kind of, it's hard to to stick all that stuff inside the crane, and or make it kind of a mobile. So I don't know. I might not. We'll see. In the meantime, the only thing that I did new since the last video here is I added the coal piles. So I basically just took some of that green. They call it wet foam, I think. It looks like this stuff. It's for for putting like fake plants and stuff in there for decorations. But it's soft, so you can dense like that. So I was able to shape that into those piles after I cut them generally to the shape I wanted, and then I obviously put glue on top. Well, I painted it black first, then I put glue on top, and I put the ballast over. So I think that came out pretty good. The other thing I did, and it's not permanent yet, but is I just basically printed out some photos of coal piles, so you can see back there. But they blend in pretty nicely with the current coal piles. And then I did another one back here, but that one has a conveyor on it, some kind of a machine and conveyor belt. And again, that kind of blended in nicely. So that's all new. I also scratch built this tower, which is, there's nothing to it. It's just a like a box with a hole, and that's for obviously that's where the connection happens here. But I still have to make, like I said, another gate or another door here for the conveyor belt to come out and dump into here. And I imagine that might be able to pivot somehow. I don't know, I gotta figure that out. And then this is just part of that kit, and I'm probably gonna change it out. I don't think it's gonna be that one, but I just put it there temporarily. And then I just put some overgrown bushes and things back there. The retaining wall, which I'm very happy with how that came out, is actually an HO trestle. It's a bridge for regular locomotive bridge. So I took that, and I've seen that these walls are massive in some of these facilities. So I just figured nobody would ever know if it was for N scale or not, because they're so big in real life. And then obviously the only other thing I added was this barge, which I'm super happy with. And I asked a lot of people on Facebook to help me with figuring out what a barge is supposed to look like. And I must have made like 35 different alterations to this thing. Originally it was much taller, it was sitting much higher. I chopped off the bottom. In fact, I still have this is the piece I chopped off. So that was sitting under there. So I made it look a little bit lower, and then it still was sitting too high, but I didn't want to cut too much into it because then I would lose the angle here. And then somebody said, well, why don't you just make it a barge that's empty already? Because when they're empty, they come up, obviously from, because there's no weight. So I said, that's a good idea, but I didn't have a hole made yet. It was just like a flat panel on top. So one of my alterations was to cut a hole all the way through, and then add these walls that I then weathered, and I made it look like panels, even though it's just one, it's one styrene sheet there. And then I added some details on the outside with rivets and make it look a little bit more industrial. And then I made it look like there's some leftover coal down there in the pit. And so that was another modification. But then somebody said, well, wait a second. If this thing normally sits down in the water, there would be some kind of watermark on the side of the barge, because once it comes up, you would see the difference in the, I guess, rust or water, calcium deposit, whatever it is that's on there. So I went back and I again added some water lines, stuff like that. Then somebody said, this might have happened in a different order, but basically these are all the things that happened. Somebody said, I had these things on the other way, they were next to each other this way. Somebody said, well, that's not the way they do it, because they have to tie it to to the dock, so they're actually turned the other way. So I had to take them all out, repaint it, re-weather it, put it the right way. So that was another modification. And then somebody said, well, there's also something called cleats, which is where they either tie things off the side, or that's what they used to tie it to the dock or to the harbor. So I mean, I know somebody also said you're not supposed to put tires on coal barges because I don't know, that's just not the norm. Even though I did see one picture with tires on one, but that might have just been like some local thing that, you know, whatever that company was using. But I don't know, I like the way they looked, so I just left it. And I love the way these tires came out because they have a lot of detail to them. These are actually HO tires and some like just chain that I found at the local hobby shop. And then I scratch built the cleats and painted them yellow. Now they're a little bright, I have to kind of weather them a little bit. But overall I think this came out great. I also added a number. I noticed that these numbers look like like a 3-year-old painted it, because normally they're hand painted or something on the barges, I guess. So the ones that I saw were, you know, terrible, so I made it look like that also. I didn't spend a lot of time trying to make it perfect. So I put it there and I put it here. And I thought that came out nice also. And then obviously, you know, the harbor scene is going to be better. I mean, I scratch built the seawall with just plain styrene and styrene strips. Painted it and made it look a little rusty, but I'm still going to weather it and make it look even more rusty. And then I'm going to add some wood bumpers across with balsa wood to make it look even more realistic. And obviously once I get the watercolor right, which I'm not crazy about this color yet, it doesn't match, I don't know, the olive green that I was using on my other harbor scenes look much better than this. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find that paint. The problem is that I went to go buy it and they were out, and I went back like 3 more times during the week and they were still out. So, you know, maybe we'll get it in this week. Anyways, so that's all that's been happening on this part of the coal facility project. I did order an air filter because apparently I've learned so much about coal. Apparently, the dust that comes off the loading process is so terrible that it's, you know, it's bad for the environment. There's all kinds of issues going on. There's court cases. It's just like really complicated stuff, which I had no idea about. It's I guess it's the carbon footprint that everybody talks about, and it's so much of it that, you know, I couldn't believe how much coal actually goes into these power plants. But so I ordered an air filter because I want to keep my layout clean, I guess, and up to code. So it's going to sit up here, and it's going to, you know, obviously suck up whatever. I might put some like ductwork and stuff. And I know that the real clean coal facilities are like tremendous buildings that, you know, suck up all the coal dust and whatever. But I don't have time for that or space. So I'm just going to put one little, you know, filter right there that's going to, you know, filter out the dust, and that's it. Conveyor belt's going to have some supports. I just haven't gotten the right sizes yet, but I will have some supports to keep that thing from buckling in real life. And that's pretty much it for this scene. I did paint all this black, and then I painted the rail. Oh, I glued the rail down, which is something I was trying to do. I just got to get the ties in here for before I finish that part. But there is a little bit of a slope to it because the track is on the wood here, but then it has to come up to the cork bed level. So I don't know. I use a technique that maybe a lot of people might not agree with, but it's been working for me nicely, and it's a lot less work than what I used to do. And that is that once I get past the turnout a little bit, I put regular cork under there, but as you can see, it ends right here. And then what I do is I take a very thick, kind of like wood glue. It's this stuff. So this is the stuff I use, and it's really thick, but thick enough so that it still pours in between the track. So what I do is, once I get the track just sitting on the last part of the cork, it naturally dips down to the wood. In other words, you know, a lot of times we try to like force it or try to, you know, figure out the slope, and then we end up creating more problems than just the natural, you know, grade that the track creates. So what I figured is if I just let that sit like that and just pour the glue in between the ties, it would create a bonding agent under the ties and around the ties. So It's exactly what it does. I mean, it's like rock solid. But what I do is I only pour a thin bead first in the center without touching the rails, because it can really get all gooped up. And it all goes in. As you can see, the ties are clear. There's nothing there, and this is not going anywhere. This is totally solid. And then once I get that first layer in, I go in from the sides, especially where the track is higher, and I just start shoving glue in there, like what you see here. So that creates a bond with the ties on the side too. And obviously I do it from the other side as well. And it also fills in the rest of the gaps. Now you're not gonna get everything. Like sometimes you see like there's one hole there, but it doesn't matter because there's so much that already did grab that that's okay, you know. And then once you, obviously the closer you get to the wood, the less the glue is gonna wanna, you know, sit there. So you don't wanna put too much glue and get above the ties, because then you have nowhere to put the ballast on top of that. So, you know, especially with this track here, it's supposed to be all, you know, caked up from the coal and the dust and whatever black stuff is going to be in between there. So I just figured it didn't really matter. Once I get the coal, you know, the ballast in there, it's going to look fine. But I did want to paint the track, so if you can see there's some brown there. I used the camouflage, the brown camouflage paint from the Rust-Oleum that everybody uses. This stuff, which is great because it makes it look dirty and grimy and rusty at the same time. So that's basically what I use for everything. So anything you see like that's pre-weathered like this, even the gate and the wall, that's all, you know, that's all that paint right there. So anyway, so that's where I'm at here. Sorry I keep going back and adding things to the video. Now I'm going to show you the unloading facility and tell you what's going on there. I made some adjustments. Alright, so here we are at the unloading facility, which is obviously my shower. And if you don't know what that's all about, check out my other videos and you'll find out why. But the short of it is that it's basically a closet because the shower is defective and it's leaking down to the downstairs when we use it, so we can't use it anymore until we rip it out. Alright, anyways, so what's going on here that's kind of new is I added some safety clips. Actually, it's just so that I don't have to keep pushing up on these lifts, because these are the brackets that go down in the car to hold them in place while the whole mechanism works. So I'm going to take those out so I can show you what I mean. I just basically took some of the same tubing and created a little clip like this. So now this goes down like that. Same thing on the other side. And obviously the spring that's under there that right now is engaged, I push up, you know, with my finger, the clip comes out, and then it allows for the bracket to snap in place. Say that it's spring loaded, so that it's always got pressure on the car. And obviously I made this pipe shorter than the car so that it sits a little higher. This way it's always putting pressure down, because if I made it exactly like that, there's a chance that, you know, it might not quite make contact with that. So that's why I made it a little shorter, and it's got plenty of power. If I need to increase the amount of hold, all I gotta do is move this little cotter pin that I created and just give it more spring, and that's it. So that's new, I think. I don't think I showed that in the last video. The other thing I did is I'm battling with this a little bit. I'm trying to see how I can get it better. But originally, when I made this piece, it was perfectly aligned. And obviously, you know, wood has its things where it bends and warps and whatever. And now I'm running into a little bit of a lift here. So, you know, I was trying to figure out a way to create some kind of a, you know, point where the wood would lean on it so it would balance itself out. So these are actually electrical prongs from like a transformer type thing, like a power. I got them off an old power source thing. So I just ripped the prongs off, and there's a natural hole there that every prong has. I just stuck a screw in it, and these are so stiff that I figured that would be great. They're nice and tiny, and I could squeeze it in there. Now the reason I have it on an angle is because they're a little too long, so I might either move it back or just, it works like that too. But now when the wood comes up, it hits the prong and levels it out. With the force of the motor pushing it, it really makes it flush against that. Now I had to put a little piece of styrene there because if it was at the level of this piece of wood, it wasn't meeting the track somehow. I don't know why that is. And if I did it there, if I pushed this down, then this side was too low. So, you know, now it's perfect here. It's a little bit off here. So I don't know, I gotta play around with it a little bit more and see what I can do. Obviously I did the same thing here with the prong. And again, I had to add some styrene because, I don't know, it just didn't want to sit at the same level, even though, you know, I don't know what happened there. Anyways, it does work. It's got a little jump on it, you know, when the locomotives go through there, it jumps a little bit, but it's not enough to derail it or anything like that. So I'll keep playing around with that and see if I can get it to work a little better. But the other thing I did was that I noticed that when I was playing around with these things, you know, there is some kind of force that I'm pushing up and down on this piece of wood that's floating here. So I wanted to get some kind of safety device to allow this thing to not move at all. So I got one of these door locks, and I cut the slide inside in half. So basically, you know, this used to be one piece. I just cut it and moved it over and mounted it. So now when I slide this in, this is not going anywhere. If that's on there, good. And I was gonna put another one on this side, but I think that's overkill. I don't think I need that much. So that's nice because when I'm not using this, or when I'm getting ready to use this, it's locked. So I know it's not going anywhere. Even if I, like, you know, hit the motor by accident, it's not gonna, like, you know, dump my engine down into the basin. Then once the engines get past there and I start getting ready to work, then I could take this out and start to work. But at least I know it's safe before that. I obviously added a toggle switch, which I don't think I had last time. I don't remember. But I did change the motor of the mechanism because even though I was happy with the old motor, it was like a very slow, extremely slow motor, which looked very realistic and everything was cool. But I don't quite have the time to, to spend, half a minute to a minute on every single car that comes by here. Because that would be 45 minutes or so by the time I get done with just unloading the cars. So, I did get a faster motor. It's a lot quieter than the other one. The only thing is that since, my mechanisms are very, like, not engineering degree type, architect type devices. I'm using, like, bare bones here because I don't know. I'm a musician. I don't know about this stuff too much. So I do my best, but it's working. Basically what I did is I created a linear actuator using a nut, like a long nut like that, and a screw rod, and then a channel, like an aluminum channel. And then the way the nut is being held there is because I bent the channel on both ends, and it holds it there really tight. So that's nice. And then I just took an L bracket, which is what connects it to the bridge, and then I put just a bolt through the thing. I made a hole, put a bolt through there, and then I took two nuts so that it has a little play. You don't want this to be tight on there because it won't move. The only thing is that the motor. By the way, I got this motor. See, here I go again. I got this motor from a printer that my wife threw out, which had a lot of really good parts inside. I recommend saving your old printers and breaking them apart and taking all the things that are inside. Some really cool things you could use for your railroad. So I took this, and it had a bracket already, so I just kind of bent it into place and threw some screws in there, and that's how it's being held up. But here's the thing. This mechanism, as it pulls back, it needs some kind of freedom to pivot this way and this way. If it doesn't, then it just gets stuck, it gets jammed. So even though the motor is on there, it's not bolted up completely. I don't know if you can see there's like a gap on purpose. I definitely left a gap intentionally there, and it's just kind of hanging there, but it works great. I'll show you. It's a much faster motor than the last one you saw in the video, but let me just show you how this works. it's working beautifully. Thing is that it shakes. I don't know if you can hear it for sure, but it shakes a little bit. So that brrr that you're hearing is the shake that I'm talking about now. The only thing that is good about that, not very professional, but the only thing that's good about that is that because I can't get this bridge to go upside down completely because these things hit the bottom of the wood, the shaking is actually, by the time it gets down to the lowest point here, the shaking is actually allowing all the coal to come out completely. So that defect in my system actually ended up helping me. Because before that it was so smooth that by the time I got here, there was still a little coal left in there. It didn't quite empty out completely, and I couldn't get it any further. So now it's definitely better, and everything's in place because there's so much stability from these brackets on the cars that it doesn't throw the wheels off or anything like that. The only thing I was running into when I was unloading, it was that, this thing, like I told you, it was hitting the coupler on the way back up, so it was throwing out the truck in the front of the car. But besides that, I mean, this is working out actually really nice. The train comes in through here if it wants to use the facility, otherwise it goes, straight through here. And then once it gets, once the locomotives get past here and the cars are here, then you can imagine it's very fast. The process is now so much faster with the new motor. So I can unload basically 2 cars every, I don't know, 10 seconds or so. And when you come back up, you'll see it in the video. When you come back up, it's just a matter of shifting the car a little bit to hook it back up here, and then over here a little bit to hook it back up to there. Sometimes, I don't know, I mean, it's just luck, I guess. Sometimes when the car comes back up, it's perfectly lined up with the car here. It's happened several times. So it actually slips under the coupler and goes right back in. So sometimes I go to adjust it and it's already done. So that's kind of cool. Definitely not on this side. This side tends to snap back because I guess all the weight is on this side with the coal. But it's, like I said, it's running pretty well. I have a few glitches here and there that I had to play around with, but otherwise it's working out nicely. Now, what happens with the coal is that once it flips around, all the coal gets deposited onto this basin, which is just basically a drawer from my one of my storage things. Not the greatest thing to put here, but it's all I had basically until I have some kind of better system here. I made a grave error while I was testing this out. I had about, I don't know, 20 cars already unloaded. There was a lot of coal in here. And I had my controller here. I was controlling everything here, and then I went up to push on these things, and I hit the basin, and it went flying into the shower, and I literally covered the entire floor of the shower in black coal. And so I lost about half a bag of coal right there. Luckily, this stuff is replaceable, and it's only like $5 for a bag, so I'm gonna have to get a few more. In fact, I lost so much that I couldn't quite fill up the entire train the last time I loaded it because it wasn't quite enough. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that even though I decided that I wasn't going to put any scenery back here, I might still do something. That's why I have that building here. I might just put like a shelf, just kind of like lean it from this plastic thing to that plastic thing, just lay a shelf on there. This way it's not dependent on this. I don't want to put more weight here than it needs. And then just put some basic scenery back there and then maybe put a backdrop. So at least if I'm shooting any footage here, it's just high enough to, to have some kind of scene here. I don't know, I'm not gonna go crazy, I don't think, but just a little bit of scenery I think wouldn't hurt. The other thing is that I don't want to be doing this manually with the, pushing the brackets up like this. So I am gonna build, this is what I have in mind. It might change 1,000 times, but I'm gonna build some kind of bracket that comes down like this, and that's gonna have some kind of pushing device that that goes up like that with a little motor or something that pushes up. with a flick of a switch, or I don't know, maybe something manual. I was even thinking of like a bike brake, because I'm a cyclist. If there's like a bike brake mounted here somehow, you just squeeze it and it would push up both at the same time, and then release it, bring it down. But the thing is that it can be connected. Whatever device I come up with, it cannot be connected to this, because obviously this has to pivot down. And I was thinking, well, what if I just mounted it here? But I can't really come up with any kind of system that would be floating here that would be able to pull this up. Plus, either way, even if I did come up with something, it would create more depth here, because I need to come up with some kind of device here that would sit there, and then I could flip it. Then it would limit myself. I would limit myself from flipping it around the way I was explaining before. So I figured if it's just floating here, where it comes up, it comes up and bumps into this and then pushes it up. And then when it's done, it just goes further than this. It goes down further. Then this is completely free of any mechanism to get in the way. So that's the plan. So, and then maybe even off of that same shelf that I'm building here, I could build the mount for whatever it's going to be here to hold the coal. I don't know, I was going to put some kind of siphon that then goes into like some kind of container or something. This way I could just pop the container off and bring it to the other side and dump it back into the loader. But that's basically it. So that's my update. As usual, it's longer than I always expect, but it's an update nonetheless. I'm going to just run some video that I took, just me practicing loading and unloading. It's only been like I've only really done this like 3 times total. So I mean, with a full train, I've done small tests with like a few cars, but I've only done an entire unit train, 3 times at most. So it's a little choppy, I have to work on my technique still, and also I did not clean the tracks at all. So my engines are running super choppy, and I didn't clean the engines either. But that's a good thing about having total control of my loader, that if something stalls or it's a little jerky, I can stop it on an instant, and then adjust as I go. It's not like just open and close. It's like I can open it a little bit, which helps with the way I control the loader. So I don't know. I think it's coming along nicely, but it still needs a lot of work. So I'll continue to update you guys as we go. All right, enjoy it.